Please welcome from Substance in Sydney, Scott Geersen.
Thank you very much. I wanted to talk about this afternoon some of the stuff that a lot of the other speakers have touched on throughout the day, which is actually really reassuring because it shows me that I'm not crazy and that maybe like this is kind of a thing. Hi everyone. I'm, as James said, I'm a director, designer, motion artist, visual effects supervisor. Mostly I work in 2D, everything 2D, and recently I branched out into some 3D as well. And up in Sydney, like James said, I now run my own little studio, Substance. And before I kind of go into any more detail about the work, I just want to play you a really quick reel.
When a fire starts to burn, spread. When a fire starts to burn, when a fire starts to spread, when a fire starts to when a fire starts to burn, right? And it starts to spread. When the fire starts to don't wanna do, know what they like, know what they like. When the fire starts to She gon' bring that attitude home. She gon' bring that attitude home. She gon' bring that attitude home. She gon' bring that attitude. She gon' bring that attitude. When a fire starts to right? Burn. Right? Burn. The fire starts to know what they like. Know what they like.
There you go. Thank you, you're too kind. So what you probably picked up in that reel, and that's a combination of Substance work and work that I've been able to do in conjunction with a bunch of other studios and collaborators. Full credits on the internet for all that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty thankful and I think fortunate to be able to work across jobs that kind of combine all of these different disciplines. People say to me when I show them the reel, generally across the years, they say, hey, wow, that's a really wide variety, as if it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. I really like to work on projects that allow me to solve a whole lot of different range of problems. So is it lucky that I've been able to do that? Well, yes, partly. That's a factor in everything that we do. More than luck, though, I think being able to look back on my career in hindsight, I think a big part of being able to have such a variety is the approach that I take. And it's an approach that I didn't know that I was taking at first, and it took me a long time to work this out. So what I wanted to kind of share with all of you guys, and the best thing that I thought I could get up and talk about today was the power of this idea, because if I had worked this out a lot sooner for myself, maybe I would be able to do some better things. Don't know. So our industry changes every single day. We know this. That's no surprise. Or maybe it is a bunch of surprises. There's new trends, techniques, styles, viewing platforms, media devices, every single day. It can be pretty overwhelming. So to be able to respond to this kind of pressure, the constant reinvention, to be able to stay engaged and effective in what it is that we're doing, we need to be, I think, more than just adaptable in our work. I think we have to be curious, versatile, tempered by a particular focus. And I know that sounds a little bit contradictory when I pair that with versatility, but I'll come back to that. And we also need to be excited by how challenging this is always going to be. It's never going to stop being a challenge. So if we can combine this kind of versatility and tenacity, it can push our skills a lot further than what we would probably realize. It gives us the flexibility to engage in and solve more problems. It essentially gives us creative freedom. This is something that I really, really believe now. And like I said, it took me a long time to get to this point. I hope you're with me on this one. But in case you're not, I just want to go backwards a little bit and just explain this. So deeply curious, by that I mean, I've got my notes on the wrong slide. Deeply curious, meaning we want to and are willing to constantly learn, and that we actually like and enjoy that process. And that in itself is a bit of a challenge. Versatile, meaning that we acknowledge that today's design requires us to wear many hats. That's pretty much a given. Challenge is kind of accepting the difficulty of it and taking risks. And then to come back to focus, I think is a real key in this area and being able to survive. The focus part of versatility, I think, means that when we start exploring, we either have a point of origin from which we use like as a base or maybe an anchor, and we explore around that, or we start in a particular area and we follow an overlapping path to get to a particular point with some kind of direction in mind or an end goal. So what does that actually mean in practice? Well, one way I can illustrate that is just by kind of analysing my own timeline. This is one of the ways that I kind of arrived at this particular approach. So my timeline was, this is everything that I've done since school, pretty much. It was a bit of a wander. Every now and then I hit a roadblock and took a little bit of a detour. The coloured bars, if they're going to pop up, those are the jobs that I've had, full-time jobs. But this is only kind of part of the picture. So in trying to work out what my focus was, what my anchor was, I really had to look at other things like books and magazines that I was reading, the movies that I like to watch, the podcasts that I'm listening to, all of that kind of thing. And when I kind of looked at all of that, and I think it's worth factoring that in, because what your focus should be, or maybe what you want your focus to be, maybe that's not exactly what you're doing for your day job. I know in a lot of cases it was not for me. So looking back across all of this, the stuff that I was interested in was kind of falling into two main categories. And it was pretty clear to me that I was really interested in combining them. And a lot of the time I was not able to do that. So when I realized that, I think it gave me a lot more of that creative freedom. So my focus, I worked out, is visual storytelling using design-led visual effects. And I mean, that translates pretty well into what I do day to day, which is film title sequences and TV commercials that require design in order to kind of explain narrative points or key points to the audience. I'm not really particularly interested in any type of visual effects that doesn't have that really clear communication component. Of course, what we all do at the heart of it, every single one of us in this room, is visual storytelling, right? But I think when you know your anchor, and my anchor being design-led visual effects, that separates the kind of stories that I want to tell from the stories that you guys tell. Because there are so many different things that we could choose from in this field of motion design. We might want to focus on children's edutainment. I love this show. Motion branding, or maybe using motion and in combination with UI like Google's material design to kind of enhance user experience. The thing to remember is that a really successful execution of any of these, I think, requires that kind of bank of overlapping skills. So again, looking back on my own career, maybe my anchor seems obvious now, but many years ago when I was younger, it just wasn't. I didn't know what I was doing. I had an enthusiasm for exploration and a passion for what I was working on, and I would throw myself into it, but I couldn't work out kind of how to combine these things, which ended up prolonging my journey, I guess. So again, this is the idea that I want to kind of emphasize to all of you today. We can't rely on luck in our journey to be able to give us the experience we need to excel or to be able to give us the satisfaction that we want out of our jobs. I know, I still come across a lot of designers, day to day, that are either, they're very good at what they do, but they're not getting satisfaction out of their jobs. They just feel like things maybe aren't coming together for them. And I was kind of asked myself, well, why is that? Curious, but feeling a lack of purpose. Maybe that could be the first one. Good at something, but maybe still not satisfied overall with where you are. Maybe that could be the second one. Maybe you've been thinking one of these words when I was saying versatist. So when I said versatist, did anyone think generalist? Yeah, a couple. Yeah, I've had this conversation a few times today. And did anyone just think, no, that's crazy, you should specialise in only one thing? Anyone? Oh, I think I saw a hand. That's kind of good. I didn't want to use those two words today. I don't like those words. I don't like that whole argument. They both have pros and cons. For some industries, maybe it's a valid approach. For motion design, I don't think either of those really work. So this is where usually in conversation someone will interrupt me and they'll say, so why don't you just do both? And a lot of articles and websites, blogs and things, they'll try and sell you on this approach. Again, maybe for some industries, I don't think for motion design and the kind of thing that we do, I don't think this works. There is an idea sort of along those lines, which has been popularised by Tim Brown, the CEO of IDEO. Do you all know IDEO, Industrial Design Company? Very famous, excellent people. He's got this idea of the T-shaped designer. So you've got the generalist side, which is kind of broad but no depth. And you've got the specialist side, which is deep, but kind of in very narrow range. If you combine these, you essentially have do both. And this is a very popular idea in a lot of industries. But I did say that I don't think that's the best approach for design and motion. I'm not saying that Tim Brown, the CEO of IDEO, is wrong. He's a very smart guy. I'm saying that maybe for design and motion, I think we could expand on this kind of approach. So if design is a bridge, then I constantly ask myself why a lot of designers don't bridge more within themselves, more skills, more ideas, more disciplines. So this is what I think. My personal response has always been, why not a jack of a whole lot of trades and a master of a few? I say that kind of lightly because I don't like the word master either. None of us are masters. I'm certainly not a master. The word implies that you've finished with your learning, and that's never the case in this type of industry. I think that's kind of come across from all the other speakers that have been up here today, and even in conversation last night around dinner, we were talking about things that we would all like to be better at. So versatilist is, I think, a really good word for this kind of approach because it encompasses a philosophy of adaptation and change, which the other phrases just don't. It also kind of wraps up the idea of learning and growing, as long as you can remember to have some kind of focus, because exploration without a focus is generalization at best, it's randomness at worst. What a versatilist does is applies depth of skill to a widening scope of subjects. And that widening scope of subjects is something that we need to be able to curate, and to be able to curate that, we really need to know what our focus is. So I'm going to blast through a couple of examples of my own, just to try and illustrate how this approach, once I was more conscious of it, has actually helped me in my work. So the first one is a set of TV commercials for Foxtel with Chris Hemsworth. It's always nice to work with someone famous. These were done through Ink Project under the direction of Ken Lambert, a very talented director. So these came with a whole lot of challenges, a really tight deadline, and a requirement for a really small team. So I'll play this one really quickly. It's only 30 seconds.
The thrill, the chase, the unknown. The conflict, the tension, the magic, the moments. Tears, the laughter. With movies, you experience it all. The complete movie experience at your fingertips.
So it's not the Avengers, but it's all right. There are actually 3 of these that were shot and posted all at once, all of them very different, all requiring a different set of skills. The drama spot had green screens and some augmentation of live action, and box office was motion control with multiple layers to get all of the Thors into one shot. I've got here a couple of happy snaps from the set showing kind of the scale of the production. So obviously for the green screens, I had to be looking after that, the lighting of them, tracking the green screens, tracking for depth, capturing HDRIs for the 3D, all that kind of stuff. And in that top corner, you can see the set for box sets and the motion control rig. Tracking for that one was quite difficult because the rig had a bit of a wobble or a bounce to it. It's just trying to track a white room has its own problems. So in a bigger studio, at which I've worked at many, this kind of stuff would be split out to a dedicated visual effects supervisor, and they don't often do a lot of the compositing themselves. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. I respect these guys that are extremely knowledgeable in this area, but personally I find that by making the decision to work on both sides of the fence and be a practicing compositor and a visual effects supervisor, it can help eliminate some potential problems that could crop up from any other kind of separation of duties. This one I like to show just because it kind of shows some of the planning that has to go into these shoots. This is all the mats, or some of the mats for the shots. And I like kind of showing this stuff because you don't often get to see this kind of behind-the-scenes detail. This is the set for the movies spot, and as you can see, there's nothing in it, nothing at all. So we had to be able to shoot this and then be able to track in all of those floating LED screens in the air without knowing exactly where anything was going to go. Previews hadn't been done, and the client didn't even know what movies they wanted to hang in the air, which could have been okay because there's a fair amount of detail in the set, the roof, the walls. There's a fair amount there that we would be able to track if they then hadn't turned the lights out. So this is an example where kind of an intense and a lifelong curiosity saved my ass on set. I love finding out how visual effects supervisors work on set. I really love learning from the big Hollywood VFX guys, and they'll just MacGyver something up on set to solve whatever problem comes their way, because you don't know what's going to happen on the day. So I knew about this trick with LEDs, and because I'm the kind of guy that likes to be prepared for a lot of things, I had a bunch of these in my VFX kit. So we're able to toss these out on the floor, and they're light enough to give us enough tracking points that we can track the depth and build a 1-to-1 scale 3D model of that set. But they're small enough to be able to really easily clean out and see in the dark. So a little trick that maybe some of you can use. Over to feature film land. This next one is for a film called Killing Ground. And on Killing Ground, Substance was the sole visual effects supplier for the film, which was kind of cool. So I want to run through a couple of quick examples. I'm just going to blast through them because I've got a lot to get through still. I'm running out of time. But the versatility here was essentially in diving into a whole lot of different tools to be able to solve a problem quickly. So we had to do things like face replacement, gunshot wounds, complicated tracking, some gun scopes, which were fun, and even a little bit of poster design. So this is part of the process for a gunshot wound to the eye. Relatively simple visual effects that pretty much probably anyone could do. We actually tracked this in After Effects. You probably recognize the After Effects trackers, yeah? We had a crack at this in Flame, and we had a crack at this in Mocha. Both of them fell over. They couldn't maintain the track when the head jerked. So rather than wrestle with one of these other programs for an hour or two, rather than kind of hand matchamate it, I thought, what the hell? I'll give it a go in After Effects, and amazingly, the track stuck. So we're able to generate the 3D head and then export elements back out to Flame, where most of the comp for the film took place. That leads into the scopes. And I wanted to quickly show this just because it combines a bit of a design and After Effects approach with more of a compositing approach. The director wanted the scopes not to look like this down in the bottom corner here, which is a black screen with a hole cut in it, which is usually what you see in TV and movies. If you actually look through a rifle scope, it looks more like the example on the right, where you can see around the rifle scope and through the rifle scope, and light kind of travels down the barrel of the scope itself. So these kind of have been exaggerated just to show you the process of what's going on. Just to be able to build that up with a whole lot of different layers and expressions, but kind of still maintain a very composite-y kind of approach. On the topic of tracking, this was a really complicated track. This was about 1,200 frames long. And this is one that worked in Flame, and that Mocha and After Effects just completely shat themselves at. There's no way we're able to track that in Mocha and After Effects just because of the nature of that shot. So just to illustrate my point that sometimes it's worth being able to dive into different packages to be able to solve a particular problem. And of course we also had some green screens and some invisible visual effects, of which there was quite a lot in the film. This is not my favourite type of visual effects. It's not super creative. It's technical, yes, and it's a challenge. It's not design-led, but if you want to take on the challenge of looking after an entire visual effects kind of feature film, then this is the kind of stuff that you have to be able to tackle, as well as all the more fun stuff. Finally, this is a shot that we actually did in Nuke. So now we've crossed from Flame to After Effects to Mocha to Nuke. And basically that was because nothing else would work. At the time that this shot came up, Nuke 10 had just come out, and that has this amazing vector generator. We'll analyze the motion of all the pixels in the frame. Flame will do this, but for some bizarre reason, Nuke generates much higher quality motion vectors. So we're able to export the ST or the UV maps and kind of wrap blood onto the rock. I don't know if you can actually kind of see the subtleties of the blood on the rock. I think that's the before shot, and then following this you'll see the after shot. But it was kind of necessary. After audience testing this came up, we had to add it, and Nuke was the only way to do it. And there was a little bit of poster design for the film too, and that basically came up just because we were so involved with the film, it made sense that the producers kind of kept us involved for the rest of the posters. The Little Death for director Josh Lawson, feature film that came out a bit over a year ago. This one kind of came our way because we had kind of previously demonstrated to a friend of the directors that we were able to interpret the narrative of film and create design-based sequences to help explain that narrative. And so based on his personal recommendation, thank you, Luke, we were able to get a crack at this one, for which I am eternally grateful. As with a lot of end credits, the whole point of this was to try and get people to stay in their seats and see who worked on it. And because the tone of the film was, it's pretty black, to be honest, but it's also just hilarious. So I do recommend you watch it. Given the tone of the film, we thought this would work, and it certainly got a lot of laughs. I didn't see a lot of people standing up and leaving when this came on. So part of the job was also creating interstitials throughout the film to explain all of the different characters' various sexual deviances. And these all get woven together in a really bizarre way. So what was interesting about this is this actually led into, like all of this, kind of the interstitials, the end credits, the opening credits. The distributors liked it so much that they decided to take one of the images from the credits and use it for the poster. So this was the Australian poster release for The Little Death. So even though I didn't design this, lay the poster out, that's one of the images from the credits, which is pretty cool. Back to TV commercials. Again, just blasting through this. This one was for some accounting software. Super exciting, right? This one was done in Flame and After Effects over about a week. And the entire week, the director and the clients were sitting right behind me the entire time, 9 till 7 or 8 at night. So anything I did, I was completely on the spot for. That's essentially the life of a flame artist, which is a lot of what I do day to day. So we had to take UI elements from their web team, kind of rebuild those, animate them, simplify them, to be able to explain what Reckon is all about. So that was kind of a really interesting challenge. And similar to the divide I mentioned earlier on about compositing and visual effects supervision, there's usually at bigger studios a divide between the compositing and the design in commercials like this. So the compositing was that we had to replace every single screen in the commercial. And if that work had been split up in this particular instance, I think the job would have taken longer because there was so much back and forth that had to go on. So knowing both sides, starting out as a designer, motion graphics artist, knowing animation, all that kind of stuff, but getting interested in visual effects along the way, this meant that I could kind of just use both of those skills. And since I had the client in the room, it kind of made sense to get their feedback on both elements at once, rather than sending stuff away, getting it back, having to brief, all that kind of stuff. So, again, while it's at a larger studio, maybe it's a valid approach to split that up. For kind of people who are freelancing or maybe starting their own smaller studio, it's really good if you can tackle that kind of whole package. And just to illustrate this further, this is a little time lapse of part of the process. And it's basically as simple as just using the tools, different tools, for their strengths. So the UI animation was all done in After Effects because it's really fast to do that in there. All the screen comps and screen replacements were done in Flame because it's really fast and easy to do that in there. That's what it's set up for. And then those screen replacements would be exported back to After Effects and slot under all of the graphics floating in space. And because they had so many layers, blend modes, they needed the depth of field, it just made sense to leave all of that in After Effects rather than trying to export those layers to composite or try to composite the screens in After Effects. You probably could have done this all in one package. I think you'd be fighting yourself though because you're not using the tools for their strengths. So in this case, the versatility was simply about getting the fastest result. The very last example I want to talk about is a recent 3D animation I made for the AEAF festival up in Sydney. I've supervised over the years a lot of 3D-based projects. I've comped even more of them, and I've worked with enough 3D artists over the years that I understand their process. But until July of this year, I hadn't actually used 3D to make an image with my own two hands, which is pretty silly considering I'm up here saying, oh, being a versatilist is so great, you should explore different things. It was high time that I got on to exploring the 3D. So there's nothing like the pressure of a real job and a real deadline to light a fire and get you going on something. So I committed to a 3D path for AEAF. But I didn't go into it without a strategy, because one doesn't simply walk into Mordor, and that was kind of how I viewed 3D. I've been seeing a whole lot of beautiful renders coming out kind of over the past year or two, Octane stuff. These two guys in particular really inspire me. The dramatic lighting, the way they use the ordinary kind of objects, but frame them really interestingly, the macro kind of style. So I knew I wanted to do something along those lines. Kind of celebrate the ordinariness of the objects that we use to create visual effects day to day. I needed a 3D package that is well known for being able to be picked up quickly, because I only had about 4 weeks to do this. So of course that's Cinema 4D, widely regarded as very easy for motion designers to pick up. And then the other part of that equation was that I chose a physically based unbiased render system, being Octane, because the whole point of that is that being unbiased and being physically based, supposedly I could draw on the knowledge that I have from being on set about lights, lenses, cinematography, and that hopefully that meant I could concentrate more on the animation and the art of the shots in a process that was hopefully more analogous to real life. So speaking of light, I've got to give a shout out to this guy, Joseph. His lighting kit really helped me in this situation, because it meant that basically I could just kind of, again, use those real world processes. So rather than trying to learn the whole of Cinema 4D, basically what I did is I made a list of, I knew what I wanted to do, I knew what I wanted it to look like, make a list of the exact techniques that I needed to learn to be able to make the animation, and ignore everything else, pretty much. So a little bit of a hack, I guess, only learning the very kind of the minimum viable amount of knowledge to be able to produce this, definitely a technique. The other technique was for the offline to just generate a really wide variety of shots, and then have one of my editor friends, Joe Morris, he helped kind of cut all this down and refine the process. That meant that I was able to kind of concentrate on the art and the lighting, rather than get hung up on what exact shot am I going to use. I mean, that approach works for Pixar. I think they talked about that as far back as Toy Story. Generate a whole lot more offline, trim it down, refine it. So if it's good enough for Pixar, then I reckon I could give it a go myself. So hopefully some of that's inspired you to want to explore some different things yourselves, not with the idea of taking a shotgun approach to your work, but more to be able to build a base from which you can expand out, and then maybe be more effective at what it is that you do. So I just want to run through a couple of things that this approach can give you, just to be really clear about why I think this is beneficial. The first thing that a versatilist approach gives you is perspective. A wider scope of skills, and having explored a broader range of skills, lets you see things through different lenses. And a deep understanding of each of those skills lets you figure out how they can be combined to form a solution. So whether that's knowing that you can move from package to package to package technically, or just knowing how your work fits into the bigger picture if you're working in a company or you're working with other people, it's only by understanding the fields to the left and the right of your own that you can understand that bigger picture. Perspective leads to better communication. It's the ability to speak many different languages, whether that's ideas with the agency and the director, whether that's crafts and techniques with other artists, or whether it's just what technology to base all that on. It's the ability to articulate a definitive idea, again to the agency or to the team, rather than speaking in terms of a vague intent. And as you move up the ranks of design, this is something that becomes more and more important. Better communication leads to better collaboration. There's nothing worse than a creative director who doesn't understand what it is they're asking for. There's nothing worse than a designer who doesn't understand the bigger picture. The empathy that you will get from exploring the disciplines of the people around you absolutely leads to better communication. And finally, all of this will give you more confidence in your work, because you'll know that your decisions are coming from a strong base of overlapped knowledge. It's a confidence to say yes to bigger opportunities, knowing that you'll find some way to tackle them, whether that's with hacks or whatever. It's knowing that you can aim beyond what you're currently capable of, because you know that you can draw on the skills of others and understand how to communicate with them. Confidence in your own decisions translates into the confidence of the clients, because they can smell that. And that leads to a greater chance of a more successful result. basically because the clients will trust you. And if the client trusts you, that's the best gift that they could possibly give, because it will give you creative freedom. So, how do you get to this? I know I'm running slightly over time. I'm going to blast through this. I'll give you the short answer first. The short answer is time. There's no magic ingredient here that I can tell you to speed this process up. But as I said, I wanted to kind of get this out and explain this to you, because the sooner that people are aware of this, the sooner they can start multiplying their own effectiveness. It's a long game, but that's part of the challenge. The sooner you start, the sooner we can start pushing these blocks of knowledge together. Stay hungry, to borrow from the famous Steve Jobs quote. Staying hungry meaning staying curious and staying eager to learn. I was lucky that throughout my career bumblings, I was kind of passionate enough to keep going. Sadly, like some people are maybe not that lucky. The fact that you're all here now, I take it to mean that you're all extremely hungry. I've learned some amazing things from the speakers today, and I hope that the rest of you have as well. So I just want to say, if you only want to do one thing, if you already have kind of a passion in mind, that's great. But please don't be closed to the idea that maybe you could be better at that one thing by exploring some kind of related disciplines. The temptation in here is just to learn a bunch of programs and think that that's enough. So like, let's take 3D. You could learn Cinema 4D, ZBrush, Octane, Redshift, Modo, Topcoat. You could still make some crap work, because programs don't make art. People make art. So I would encourage you all to please be curious about people and relationships and working more effectively in teams, how to communicate and work better. And these are some of the things that are definitely worth exploring. Stay foolish, to borrow the other half of Steve Jobs' quote. That just means accepting some more risk, accepting some challenges, even if you think that those challenges might be a little bit uncomfortable. So, wrapping up. If we can work out our anchor, our base, and if we can explore outwards from there, then our knowledge of the related disciplines will enable us to deal with the change and the challenge that comes our way over the next 5, 10, 20 years in motion design. If we stick with it long enough and we can push these blocks of knowledge together, then the disciplines that we collect will increase our effectiveness, and we'll be able to pursue the work that matters most to us, which essentially gives you creative freedom. To finish, I just want to leave you with a quote. This quote hangs on the wall of my studio because it reminds me that no matter what I think I know, I actually don't know very much, and there's always more learning to do. So this quote embodies the approach that I used to unknowingly take and the approach that I now try to take to heart. Never to rest, never to have, only to grow. Always the beautiful answer that asks the more beautiful question. Be curious, ask, and grow. Thank you. Dry mouth.
Yeah, you get that. And sweaty palms.
Sorry that was so fast. I really wanted to get that out. I feel good now that it's out.
Are we still talking about your prezzo, or?
Yeah.
Right, good. Thanks very much, Scott. Great insight, and incredible how you cover so much software and tools. Any questions from the audience?
Thank you so much. I feel like really inspiring about this, because you can see how you can start, especially I am just starting. So I just wanted to know, because all the time I feel that I need to go home after working as a freelancer, and then going home, studying, and then to keep growing the skills. So how do you manage to improve your skills with your full-time work and everything?
More than just, trying to find more hours in a day. It can just be about managing your time effectively. So obviously with the visual effects and After Effects and stuff, there's a lot of rendering that I've got to do. Even if it's just a RAM preview, I'll have a whole bunch of podcasts or websites or things open. So I'm actively trying to suck in a bunch of knowledge throughout the day, and whether that's sitting on forums to figure out how to do all that Cinema 4D stuff, or listening to some podcasts from some way more experienced designers. But yeah, I mean, time is definitely the pressure. So that's why I say it's a long game, and you just have to start chipping away. And the sooner you do it, then the more prepared you'll be at whatever age
I wanted to know, following on from that question, what your thoughts on the theory of 10,000 hours.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it takes a long time to get to a level of accomplishment in something. So, I mean, I've only just started on the journey of learning the 3D and the rendering. I fully acknowledge I have like an extremely long way to go. But maybe that's, maybe I'm not going to make a lot of 3D myself. Maybe I just want to be better at working with other 3D people. The other thing, I mean, again, this comes back to the long game. The sooner you start kind of exploring these packages, and whether that's, grabbing the student versions, the demo versions, the trial versions, whatever it is, have a play with them. It's about having that constant curiosity. And I guess my hobby is my job. So weekends and nights, I really like learning new things. Maybe that's sad, but I get a kick out of it. So again, trying to get there in whatever way you can.
Does your partner get to see you at all?
She's in the same house, yeah.
Yeah, good.
That's a pressure in itself. So
Yeah.
often that's why I'll stay up late. I've got a little boy, and so to be able to spend time with them, that means then I just have to stay up later to get the things done to be able to learn.
Sleep when you're dead.
Yep.
Any more questions?
Keyframe or die.
Keyframe or die. Nice one. Hey, it's trademarked. You can't use that.
Thank you for the talk. That was awesome. I'm exactly like you, so I appreciate everything you just talked about. But I'm wondering. I've been hearing about this stuff a lot recently, and I'm wondering two things. One, is it maybe a character thing? Is it maybe a personality that some people have, that they're very curious by nature? And also, how do you stop yourself from going too far? Because I'm guilty of that. Maybe like, where is the line?
Deep into something.
Yeah, like where do you choose? Because right now we actually interested in doing our own sound as well, our own music. Maybe is that too far?
The whole, is your personality suited to a life of learning? I hope kind of everyone under the baby boomer generation is, because, the technology and stuff that's coming out now, it's only going to, flood us more in the next 20 years. So if we don't have that kind of attitude of like, just dive in, solve the problem, figure out how it's done, Google it, we're not going to keep our heads above water. I think it's something that can be learnt for the people who don't kind of have that natural curiosity. But that said, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. All you can try and do is inspire them to want to find this within themselves. And then in terms of going too deep into things or what to focus on, I do strongly believe that the things that you branch out into should overlap strongly with what your core interest is. So I mean, like I don't do editing myself. I don't do color grading myself. I have friends who are very, very good at that, and that's one of the reasons that I choose not to do that. But yeah, I think that I wouldn't choose to... If you're choosing an interest that doesn't overlap with what your focus is, that's a hobby. It's kind of unrelated to what you do. Not to shit on what it is that you're interested in. If that's sound design, like that's great. But my own personal approach, I can only speak to that.
I was just kind of inquiring about flame and how it feels like it's always been this really elusive thing. Ooh, it's a flame suite.
I was wondering how many
you got
people...
the touch to flame suite.
Yeah, I was wondering how many
I was kind of
people
wondering
knew
if
what
you
it
talk
was.
about your history in that and maybe like Flame Unleashed or whatever it's called, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's just Flame Unleashed is just Flame on a Mac,
Right.
which exists now, which is great because it means that the like traditionally Flame ran on 20 years ago, it ran on a computer the size of a fridge, and it had to be kept in a cold room, and it was $500,000 for this Flame system. Now, it's a few thousand. You can run it on your Mac. So that's great for a small studio. It means we can kind of scale up or down. It's on a subscription, a monthly kind of basis now, which is good. So if you need another one, you can grab another one. But as to how kind of I got into it, it was just kind of a natural progression from motion design, working in motion graphics in a post-production studio that had Flames. And then being asked to hand over my designs to a Flame suite, I was basically like, well, I want to get in there and work on those great jobs. I'll learn a little bit more about it. And then when the Flame guys say, hey, why did you give me this thing in this way? I'll know what the problem is, and I'll be able to, not only will I be able to give them what they need, I'll be able to start learning some of that myself and then maybe apply that to my work. So I mean, like, green screens is a big thing that a lot of motion designers don't do, and I strongly recommend that all motion designers kind of play with some green screens and some actual compositing stuff rather than motion design, because it all helps. Does that answer that?
no, it's just
Yeah.
flame thing's always been elusive.
It's put on a pedestal a lot. At the end of the day, it's compositing, but it is compositing with clients in the room all day, every day. So that comes with its own pressures. At the end of the day, a node's a node.
A node's a node. Very quick, Annabelle. Super short question. Yeah, sure. Wait for the mic. Don't turn around again.
I've got it. I've figured it out already. Following on from the flame question, how do you differentiate charging wise? If you, at the end of the day, they're paying for your talent. So, because in the olden days, when when flames were in a giant fridge and Paint Box had a pen on a cable,
So you couldn't steal it.
Yeah, exactly. Flame would be like stupid money per day, whereas After Effects, we're all getting paid bugger all. But my theory has always been, at the end of the day, the operator is what's making these things tick. And yes, there's licensing, but how do you justify a massive flame cost and do you charge your clients, it's probably more information that you want to hand over, but how do you do it?
No, I mean, I'll be brutally honest. The rates that some post houses, not all post houses, the rates that some post houses still charge for flame is crazy. As a smaller studio, we don't charge those types of rates, but we're also not competing for the type of work that they're doing, which involves many people. So there's that, but then it's also, at the end of the day, pricing something is based on a value. And so, like, I mean, yes, there's design rate, there's a flame rate, there is a nuke rate, in the same way that any post studio would have rate cards for different tasks, charging out a creative director versus charging out a mid-level designer. So I guess when you're combining, like in the accounting job, you're combining both. You're charging for more than After Effects, sure. You're charging a little bit more than flame because you're throwing in, and you don't throw in the After Effects for free, because essentially what you're doing is you're saving the production company having to need a second body in the studio, and that's worth something to the production studio. So you save them a bit of money, but you charge a little bit higher, and you meet in the middle, and everyone ideally wins. So that's the idea anyway.
Cool.
I'm going to have to jump in and wrap it up there. Thanks very much, Scott.